Welcome, everyone. I'm Dick Deming, Medical Director of Mercy One Cancer Center and the founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. Welcome to our weekly cancer education series. It's brought to you in part by a grant from the Iowa Oncology Society. Our topic tonight is the healing power of the creative arts, and my guest is Anna McCracken. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you for having me this evening.
Oh, it's great to have you. Anna is a writer and a poet and so much more, and she is the founder of the Ames Writers Collective. And before we start talking about the healing arts, let's learn a little bit more about you. So where are you from originally?
Originally, I was born in Los Angeles, California.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I found out later that my birth mother traveled all the way from Duluth, Minnesota in 1961 to have and leave me there.
In California,
Yes.
1961.
Yes. So I'm giving away my age.
And
I
so
just got my Medicare card.
Well, I'm 72, so
Okay.
there we go. And so you were adopted.
Yes.
And where did you grow up then as a child? In California?
Yeah, so my parents were from Peoria, Illinois, but they ended up in Los Angeles. And when my dad graduated from UCLA with his PhD in thermodynamics, we moved to Germany at that time because in 1969, because according to him, only professors of his degrees could only find jobs pushing brooms in university
States.
settings.
Oh,
so we
okay.
moved to Stuttgart, Germany.
Cool. And you were 8 years old? Or so?
Nine, yes, 9.
And then how many years did you live in Germany?
3. So, ja, ich kann Deutsch sprechen.
Ja.
Ja,
Was dich nicht umbringt, macht dich stark.
ganz bestimmt.
Okay. I don't think either of us know what the other person
You said something will make me strong.
There you go. Yes,
And
that
I
which
said-
does not kill me makes me strong.
Yeah, and I said yes for sure.
Yeah. Very
So,
And did you learn other languages too growing up?
you know, if we'd stayed there, we would. My parents sent us to a German school as opposed to sending us to the American, and because he was teaching as a professor. So had we stayed there, I probably would have been trilingual. And we would have been learning French at the time I left. So, but I was already fluent in German.
And so when you came back to the United States, how old were you?
13, and we went to Peoria, Illinois.
Okay.
Yes.
Was it culture adjustment?
It was. But I love it there now. But at the time, it was a hard adjustment. My parents were from there, as I said.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so did you do high school years in Peoria?
Yeah, 7th and 8th grade. My parents forgot that they had put me back a year so I could learn the language. And when we came back, they jumped me back to my real grades. So I always like to say that my grammar problems are because of missing the 6th grade. So
What was your claim to fame at Peoria High?
I think one of the things I was proud of, but I didn't realize that till later, was writing for the school newspaper. So I had a byline, wrote columns and profiles, and so, but nobody really noticed, including myself. I think I was in culture shock having moved there. So when I went to Iowa State, I ended up in interior design instead of journalism.
Okay. So back to your high school journalism days, do you remember like one of the pieces
No.
you might have written? You don't
No.
Not a single one?
Oh my God, I told you I just got my Medicare card.
Well, I would think you remember. I remember writing my very first letter to the editor when I was a senior in high school.
Oh.
So I remember that. It was a very important global topic. We were going to have the first ever outdoor high school graduation, and they canceled it because the chairs were going to damage the football field. And I was just incensed and wrote a letter to the editor of our newspaper in this small town in South Dakota. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say I don't remember, but what I do remember about it is that we still cut out, I don't remember, I think somebody must have typed them up, but we would sit and literally cut out the titles and, the blocks and
So the
and paste
making of
them.
this
Yes,
paper,
I
yes.
remember that vividly
Yeah,
with
okay.
rubber cement. Yeah.
So Iowa State, interior design. Did you graduate in interior design?
No, I was a wayward student at the time. I graduated in fashion merchandising.
Okay.
So
And what was your first job out of college?
at Madigan's department store in Chicago. So and it was a family-owned business, so there was no upward mobility. So I had a short stint in Atlanta, Georgia, where I worked for Hart, Schaffner and Marks, and they were buying all the mom pop stores around the country. Kansas City was Jack Henry, if any of you are familiar with that, and they transferred me home to Chicago. So I became an associate buyer for Hart, Schaffner and Marks.
When in your life did you shift from the art of fashion to the art of poetry?
Oh man, that would have been a long time. It would have if you jumped forward.
You stayed in fashion.
No,
for a
I ended
long
up
time?
working at the University of Chicago Business School.
Okay.
Running their events for their alumni and the donor relations, and then I ended up at Stanford Law School running an executive education program.
Okay.
So, and then I moved into fundraising at Hewlett Packard, doing the United Way campaign.
When did you first become interested in poetry to the point that you described yourself as somebody interested in
So
poetry?
shall we say poetry and writing in
Yeah,
general?
yeah.
So I think it was when I started searching for my birth mother when I was 36, and I was still single at the time, and I was probably jealous of people's Christmas cards talking about their families, and so I decided to start telling the story of my search for my birth mother, and it was pretty much a 3-year journey until I met her on the day she died. And so writing those stories got me thinking, oh, I want to go back to my roots of writing. And I had always written before that, letters to a friend for 20 years. We were pen pals, but that really started me into the writing. And so once I started writing, then poetry started to, sort of weave its way in through writing prompts, probably.
And the first time you wrote a poem, do you remember?
Oh, goodness, you're reminding me now. I should have brought those. I wrote poetry in high school, and I also
Did you publish them in your newspaper?
no, I had 2 notebooks that I was all about my handwriting, and I either wrote them for myself, or I had a boyfriend who became a friend, and he would send me his poems, and so I hand wrote them all out and then did artwork in those books.
Okay.
I had totally forgotten
So
about
this does
that.
go way back.
Way back, because that
Okay.
was high school.
And-
you were sad and
And I've been testing your
In
memory
love.
so you don't. Do you remember a poem in school? It might be grade school or high school that the first time a poem kind of clicked with you.
it's probably Khalil Gibran. Oh, what was it? It was that poem that people used in the 70s for their weddings and things like that. So I must have been, I don't know, dreaming about getting
Okay.
married or something. And I do not remember the name of it. I can see the cover of my book, though.
Mine was more like 7th grade Casey at the Bat.
Ozymandias was the first poem I ever
Oh.
memorized in the 7th grade.
Yes.
That's
The pyramids, and then they leave the
Yes.
graffiti at the end.
yes.
Yeah,
mhm.
yeah. So then, did you take English or literature or writing in college?
I tried, and I had too bad. Jane Smiley was at Iowa State when I was there, and at that time she hadn't written 1,000 Acres, so
Yes.
she was just Jane Smiley causing problems with her other colleagues. Probably, she's a funny lady, and so I didn't know she was there, and so I did have one instructor, and he gave me a C, which I remember thinking that I did not deserve that, and I went to fight for it. But there was something about him and the way he was talking to me that made me say, I'll take the C, and I left. And he was trying to make me cry, and I decided I'm not crying for nobody over a grade, and then I left the room. And then I think I switched out of English.
So let's jump to present day. So I know you, like many of us, wear many different hats. So what are the hats that you wear now? The one that kind of connected us is that you work with cancer survivors
Correct.
and help facilitate their writing, in particular poetry, but also, essays. What other hats do you wear right now?
So I have a nonprofit called the Ames Writers Collective, which I started it up in COVID and had hoped for a spot, to rent. And I ended up buying a building, but I've put that building on the market, and I'm just gonna focus on things at the library, at the Ames Public Library, and the cancer groups that I lead. But under the Ames Writers Collective, we have a week-long kids writing program at the Ames Writers Collective. We have them writing poetry, making collages, writing short plays, and during their time with us. And also we have second Sundays for the kids at the library, and we also do generative writing for adults. And so I've got an MFA, but I don't like teaching writers how to write. But what I do like to teach them is generative writing. And so I look at the cancer groups that I lead as generative writing, and that means you take, I don't know, let's say I gave you a prompt, who am I today? And you would just start writing, and that's what we refer to as generative writing.
Right.
So,
And
it's practice.
So that when you say the Ames Writers Collective, I sort of think of, so it's the Ames version of the Iowa Writers Workshop.
Yeah,
Kind of.
I know, yeah.
And that, if I heard correctly, the Ames Writer Collective is not just a cancer thing. That
No.
is just children, adults,
Yes.
people, but it's not focused specifically on
No,
cancer.
it's not, but probably my love, and I have volunteers now who lead the other two, but my love is leading the cancer writing groups.
How did that start?
That started back in California when I was, you think with that first year when I was like, after writing those Christmas letters, I'm going to write my memoir in 6 months, get an agent, and it's going to be a bestseller.
Now, are you at Stanford at
I
this
know
point in time?
at this point I've been laid off from Hewlett Packard with a package, 2002, and I had this thought. I went to Maui. They had the Maui Writers Conference, and I learned the hard way that you don't sell books that way. And so I started taking classes. And when I got back to the Bay Area, where I had been living for years, I took a class with an author named Laura Davis, who she's also known for a cancer memoir that she's written. And she was leading us, and she kept talking about this group in Santa Cruz that she led for women. And I asked her, I'd love to do that. I had studied the Amherst Writers and Artists Method, which believes that everybody's a writer, and they teach the same way in generative writing. And she said, well, no, you haven't got your own book published, and you haven't had cancer, so you can't lead these groups. And so I was like, wow. So, but one day her
Another reason to have cancer.
right. I'll never forget that. But then her mom had issues out on the East Coast, and she put a call out to our group, would somebody like to volunteer? And I jumped at it. And so I started leading these. And for a long time, nobody asked me about my cancer. And then one day I was waiting and prepared. And I said, I do this in honor of two of my girlfriends who died when we were in our 40s. They left behind 6 sons between the two of them. And everything that I do, all my writing is in their honor. So, and they're like, oh, okay. We moved on. They didn't care.
So you've been writing in Maui and San Francisco and Santa Cruz. How does Ames compare?
You mean for this type of? Ames is a different animal, and they're probably all watching now. They never watch anything I'm doing, and but it's interesting. It's a small town without the school. The kids are all gone, and it's nice and quiet, and people don't sign up so easily. And so I started at the Bliss Cancer Center, and I had a good group, but 3 of my writers passed away. Because I'm adopted, I get attached to absolutely everybody, so it's very hard on me. And but because no one was signing up there, someone I knew here in Des Moines, he said, why don't we pitch the Stoddard group? And so we did, and they jumped on it, and now we have wait lists for people in my classes. So, yeah.
And your classes are like once a week? once a
No,
month?
we do them I was doing them once a week, and then Dr. Nish, who had did a foreword for my book, cautioned me one day, Anna, you're going to burn yourself out. And sure enough, I felt that coming. So I do them in 8-week sessions, and we do twice a month, and then it depends on my travel schedule. So we work around that because they really don't care when they are. We just do them on Mondays.
And do you do it in person or via Zoom?
That was sort of the tail end of COVID too. So we started it on Zoom, and then we've had people. I have a woman who found us in South Carolina. She's writing with us now, and we've had other people, Minneapolis. So we do them on Zoom so that people can be in the comfort of their home. And a lot of people they go through these cycles of I'm fine, and then they get a re-diagnosis, and then they're not well again.
And I think if I heard you correctly, you can limit the number of people on, and so you have a session of 8 weeks, and then get another group. And
Even
take
if
them
they
through
were in
8
person,
weeks.
I would probably limit it to about 8 because you can't. It gets too unruly then.
Yeah. So with when you started working with people with cancer, and maybe that goes all the way back to Santa Cruz, or
Yeah,
even
2008.
before?
It's been a while.
2008. What did you learn about the writing experience and cancer?
I think the most important thing that my takeaway from this is that and they've told me this, and it also shows up in their writing, but that when you have these long diagnoses, and sometimes they feel like their family members don't want to hear about it anymore, and so when they come to these groups, it's sort of like they're talking to people who get it.
There's the benefit of the group.
Right, and they don't feel lonely. That's the one thing. I think they've told me they feel really lonely out there with their cancer diagnosis. I know several of my writers are actually single, living at home single, maybe divorced. They have kids, but they're home alone. So it gives them this touch point to not feel so lonely.
I think of the written word in a couple of ways, and you'll probably give 5 more things, but there's the writing, like journaling, that is just can be cathartic, and nobody else might read it. You might just be journaling at home alone, and you're the only one who sees the words there. That there can be healing power in that writing, but there can also be healing power in writing in a way for other people to read it. And this is probably very different.
Right.
How would you maybe talk to us about what you think is the healing power of like journaling by yourself where no one else reads it? And what do you think it adds when you're writing with the idea that somebody else will read it?
For my own, I journal pretty much every day. They can go from rants, right? They don't have a beginning, middle, and end. I try and do that just out of practice, but, they're noodling, right? Whereas when my groups come together, whether it's a poem or, they're writing an essay about something, they all seem to, it's sort of a natural thing where they're starting and they have a beginning, a middle, and end, which is a really good story. You always want to have a beginning, a middle, of end. And they always, when we read them out loud to each other, it's just like this amazing thing. They sound like they're published pieces, and of course when you go back, there's a bunch of mistakes and everything else, but in the moment they're just so heartfelt, and something invariably, I don't think I have anyone who right now, and it's been a long time, who refuses to read, because I always tell them it's like, something in what you have written is going to touch somebody else, and it's something that they probably need to hear in that moment. And, and then you may look at me and go, well, you're not writing about cancer. Well, I can write about the depression that I've suffered from my life, or I don't know, the other day I was writing about my migraines for a group, and something about that. There's always something. I've learned to live better by listening to these stories that I've heard from these writers who write with me.
Do you think, I kind of, when you're just journaling, as you say, you don't have necessarily a beginning, middle, and end. I wonder whether, I'm just kind of thinking of myself, when I write with the idea that somebody else might read it, I tend to put more humor in it than I do if I'm just journaling. Is that a human tendency? Do you see that with the groups that you work with? Or let's say your own journaling. Do you put humor in your own journaling? Or
No, I don't. I don't know. A lot of times
Okay.
I wonder what I'm doing with it because I don't go. I have all of them all lined up, and I don't go back necessarily and read them. I think they might put humor in them, but I don't know if they think about it. Because
Okay.
one of the things, you're talking about editing, right? About going, oh, I'm making a conscious choice here to add humor to something.
If I'm writing something, and it might be I'm writing a talk I'm going to give, or I am writing a
right.
book, but it's for an external audience, not just for me. One of my ways of trying to communicate or try to create a connection is to add some humor or poignancy, which it can be different. And I'm just curious with your group you're working with.
No, I think they're writing for themselves, knowing that they're going to read this out loud. And I'm trying to think back when something might have been funny. I can't remember. I don't think people put it purposely in there. And I asked them not to think too hard about what they're doing.
Okay.
I asked them to keep if they're writing by hand, to keep that hand moving and just
You
let
told
it
me
flow.
of a cancer patient who taught you a lot of dirty words.
Dirty words
Curse
is what you want to
words.
call them, yeah.
Curse words. Now, I would assume that had some tongue-in-cheek to it.
Oh, she was hysterical. But she would do that. She would be ad-libbing, while she was, while we were having conversations together. So,
When did you bring poetry into this generative writing?
I consciously did that last year. Before that, I was using it every once in a while, and I was stressing myself out trying to find the best, like the one I gave you earlier, "Who am I today?" It's sort of like, well, what could this quote maybe inspire writing? And it became really stressful. It was also, I was teaching in the Amherst Writers and Artists Method, which says that after you've written that and read, that everyone makes a comment about your writing. And so that was stressing me out too. And so I took another training last January called Wild Writing, which she uses strictly poetry all the time. And you just write and read. No one comments anymore. And so I thought people were really going to balk when I said, we're going to try this a new way. And they were all like, oh, thank God. We've been stressed out here, couldn't listen to people's stories when we knew we had to comment on something glorious about the piece of writing, right? And there's always something glorious. But so I started using only poetry. And so what I do is I'll read a poem twice, usually for this group because I had started out this way. My trainer didn't do it this way, but I'll have a slide where I've typed it out for them. A lot of them have issue maybe remembering, want to go back, and I'll have a photograph that I've taken from somewhere, and I will read it twice, and then I'll give them what I call jump-off lines. I'll take 3 lines from the poem, or just say, whatever you want to do. I hate on his poem today, and I'm going to write about this, and so they're free to do whatever, but it's all 100% poetry now.
And then they read it. That's interesting that the different techniques, Amherst and Wild, and I can see that because I can't imagine if you're in a group of cancer survivors reading their poems and you have to comment on it that you're going to say something critical.
No, we don't criticize. No, Amherst doesn't criticize.
Okay,
No,
so it's always got to be
always
positive. Okay, gotcha.
Or you don't say anything at all, right? You just there was no requirement to ever comment on anyone's.
Okay, so
but
you didn't have
if
to.
you did, and if they weren't, then I always went, right?
Yeah.
It was stressful.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So now it's just
Now it's just
write and read.
poem, write, read, flow. It's just
Okay.
this nice flow.
Maybe compare and contrast your workshops where you were working on narrative, not poetry, and then poetry. How do you compare and contrast those workshops?
I don't require them to do either or.
Oh, okay.
They come up. You know, I mean, just last a week ago, it was sort of like, mine came out in a poem, and it shocked the person. You know, it was these short clip sentences, and you know, and it's like, what's a poem? You know, I'm not studied enough to go, what's a poem? You know, but
Right.
we all were like,
Because you could have a poem that looks like a
right?
paragraph.
It looks like, yeah, exactly.
So it's arbitrary whether you
Right.
call it a poem or a written narrative.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So could you share with us maybe a bit of your writing, but then
Okay.
also share with us a poem by one of your students? And I see some of your books there, and maybe
These were all
maybe a
influential.
poem,
Yeah.
a poem by someone that.
Oh, cool, by Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Karen's how Dr. Deming and I met.
We were at a workshop by Karen.
Poetry Palooza. Let's put a plug
Poetry
for Poetry
Palooza, yes, it's
coming up.
coming up in
free
April.
to all who want to attend. 17, 18, 19.
And a couple years ago, one of the
Yeah.
guests was the poet laureate of Kansas, who is a cancer survivor, and
She's from, what was it, Queens or the Bronx? And
Grew up in
moved to
New York.
Kansas. I always thought that was funny. She's a lovely
let me
lady.
see.
Here, maybe
So
you could read something
Yeah,
of hers.
who are you going to read first?
Well, I'll just do mine. I found it, hopefully it'll speak to why I do this. One might wonder how someone who has not had a cancer diagnosis, can relate or be related to. In my sessions, all stories are welcome, be they about cancer or remembering a childhood Christmas. Writing together with these groups has increased my awareness of what it means to be human. We all have dreams, desires, and hopes. And as one of the writers included the anthology told me on a Monday night, we all have one thing in common, Anna. We're all going to die. But unlike you, we know what's going to get us. And that was the one who taught me how to swear. Not that I didn't know how to do it already. These writing groups have nudged me towards putting my life into perspective. I continually ask myself what's important, what needs to be shed. So,
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then this is a new book, so
Oh, yes. Let's put a plug.
promote it here. Yes.
It's called Writing Circle Mondays, Reflections on Life and Cancer. And so we collected these poems for 3 years. And Terry Doherty, who's from Des Moines area, she got tired of listening to me tell everyone we were going to make an anthology. And so she organized me. So she has a co-editor credit on the book.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
why don't you share a few of the poems?
So
from
I'll share
the book?
Lynn's. It's called I'm So Tired. We lost Lynn in December of 2023. Who am I today? Today, I am tired. By the way, she always wrote poetry. So if I did bring a poem, she always responded with poetry. Today, I am tired. Woke up that way. Got up. Went to the bathroom. Went back to bed. It was a good way to start my day today. Warm, cozy, empty bladder. I am still tired. Tired of wanting a nap. I am still tired after my nap. I am tired of being tired nearly all the time. I used to have tons of energy, feet hitting the floor, running at my day. As a classroom teacher, you need to be in good shape, and tired is only allowed after the kids leave. I used to wear dresses and heels, sometimes running on those heels, my feet only tired after a long day of teaching, coaching, running, only then. Now being tired is a familiar, not so comfortable companion that I run into every day. Being tired is now in my blood and in my body of worn-out blood cells. My work dresses are now bathrobes. My heels are traded out for slippers. Even when I dress for an out-of-house activity, fatigue dictates what I wear, what I do. Being tired is my unwanted companion. Fatigue is my enemy who keeps me from adventure, vacation, housekeeping. Except for housework, it becomes a sacrifice. I make sacrifice to the gods of fatigue. I bow my head to falling asleep unexpectedly. I dream again of classrooms, dresses, heels, and dream of youthful, healthy energy of running.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's a very polished piece. I would imagine that doesn't
Yeah.
happen just out of a hour-long workshop.
Right,
And
right.
do you work with your students to help edit and polish?
So she would polish them and then send them to us. Like she would do it right away and then send them off. We corrected when Terry got a hold of these. Everybody was allowed to just sort of tweak things, because this book's basically sort of unedited, and the idea of that is to give the reader an idea of what came out in the evening of the class. And so, so we allow for a spell check and maybe a comma here and there, but basically we try and keep the honesty of the piece as it was written.
And in the workshops themselves, do they work on their own polishing of them?
No.
Or they would do that? Yeah. So they create the piece. They don't come with the piece.
No.
In the workshop, they create something right then and
Right
there.
then and there, and we read
Yeah.
it and we move on. We have in 2 hours, we have time to do with 8 of us about 3 poems and about 20 minutes of writing each piece, and then we go around and read.
And do people become better at it over the course of 8 weeks? Like the first week is
I
like,
think
oh my
they
gosh.
do. And I sit there, one of the things, the rules is that you cannot say, oh my God, this piece is horrible. And oh God, the last week I was like, oh my God, I'm writing a memoir and these people the pieces that they wrote the other night, and I was like, mine is such dribble. And I had to like bite my tongue. It's like, because that's a rule. You can't say your stuff's dribble. What we can say sometimes is, oh, I have to follow yours. So.
Right, and at what point? So you offered, and I'm going to take you up
Yeah.
on it to share one that of Karen Miriam Goldberg, and was she a poet before she had cancer? I'm trying to
I'm
remember.
not sure. I can't remember.
But everyone starts off as an amateur.
Right.
Most people don't get their first poem published. So the difference between this and that is probably the fact that she's published in a poet laureate is probably not as important. But
Right.
this is one that she shared with us that she wrote, and it's called Lilac. The day after they cut my breasts off, just home from the hospital, not even napping or talking on the phone yet, that day I walked on my own 2 legs down the dirt road over the slope of loose rocks, cradling as I walked the broken body, the large orange-handled clippers, the big wind holding me, the man I loved behind me getting ready to start his car to come to get me. That day, beginning the healing from all of it, unslashed from the expectation of what knife or infusion comes next, was the day I made my way to my mother-in-law's old-fashioned dark purple lilac and reached against the tightness of gauze and paper tape, against the odd sensation of parts removed and scars just making themselves, against my sore arms reaching toward their old strength, to gather and hold, to cut and cut and cut all I could fill my arms with, all the dark purple, alive with death and birth, loss and blossom, and the white ones too. My arms filling with the explosion of lilac, my life filling with wind and weight of branches, all of it against upon my open chest, all of it ready to be carried into the next life that starts right now. Powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's an amazing woman.
Yeah, yeah. How about you share another one from
Okay.
either your own or
I wrote 2 essays, so
Okay.
they're too long, but let's Thankful by Cindy Hook. The other one I think was Lynn Wilson. I can't remember if I named her. And she also wrote To Who Am I Today? Today I am thankful. I am hopeful. I am positive and grateful because yesterday I had one of my most energetic, fun, and productive days in 2 years. After backsliding a bit last month, I think I'm moving forward. Nice weather yesterday really helped. I purchased an electric bicycle earlier this year. Body aches kept me from trying it, even on those previously nice days. It was hard to wonder if I had wasted my money. Was this going to be my life? Now I can share with you, don't get discouraged on your bad days, even if you had 10 bad to 1 good. The sun will come out tomorrow. I better save this entry to reread to myself on a next bad day and remind myself of my first 6-mile ride of the season on a sunny first day of spring.
Nice.
Yeah. I should pull that out for myself too.
Yeah. Remind ourselves that, when you're down and low, when you're hurting, it's not always going to be that way.
Yeah.
That we've got ups and downs, and everybody's got bumps.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are some of the ways in which creating something do you think helps improve quality of life? And I use that phrase as opposed to, say, making us happy or bringing us joy, or there's something that I'm sure you witness that is something positive that comes out of even maybe writing a very sad reflection of sad things.
I think it's, you mean to actually have this and hold it, or to actually have at an end of a session?
I would say even the act
end
of
the
writing.
Yeah. I think sometimes, people show up, and I can think of one in particular who's having a hard time again, and she didn't feel like she could necessarily finish her piece of writing, but just the act of having tried that evening and having I always send them, if they ask for them, the prompts again, and she'll continue that writing when she has more energy. But it's sort of like this act of showing up, I think on some level brings hope. And that it also is like this burst of energy. Even though they may have come tired and sad, they may leave tired, but I think that there's some light that's been put into their life because they've come together with other writers in similar situations.
Maybe even a bit of an adrenaline shot that
Mm-hmm.
happens. I also wonder, there's somebody, I have to look up who I'm quoting because I forget, that I don't know what I think till I see what I've written. And, we think we're thinking, but it can be just perseveration and just not really. And most of us, if we go to write it down, we're not going to write just gibberish. We're going to want to write something that makes sense. And so the act of what I'm thinking into writing really can help formalize, for me, what am I really thinking? Is this logical? And as I try to make it logical, because I'm usually writing thoughts that I want to be logical, not just rhyming words that I like the sound of, that it does help me understand what I really think and hopefully feel about what I'm writing.
I think, you keep using logic, which is in your head, right? I was using a lot of logic today while I was editing 10 pages. Whereas, where I said earlier where I wanted to compare my crappy writing to their wonderful, and so when we read it, when we've just regurgitated out on the page, some are thinking slower about it. I tend to write really fast and don't know what I'm writing. And so when we come together and read it together, it's weird how it always then it's this heartfelt dump, and then it sounds logical. It's weird. It's almost magical the way it happens, and we're not tending to edit this, and I'm really asking them not to think really hard about what's coming out through their pen, because when you start writing like this and you tell yourself, I'm not going to edit. And there's such a difference between writing with the pen and typing. It's really surprising, the kids who we lead, they show up and they write by the pen with their pens and paper. And we're shocked because, all of them they're glued to their phones.
So talk more about the difference you perceive or that you've seen in individuals writing with paper and pen versus writing on
You can tell
a
a more
laptop.
heady piece, You can, that it's more thought out. And whereas
Which is more thought out, writing with a pen and
once you
paper?
once you start, because when you're writing with a pen and paper, hopefully you're just, you're letting it go. And if you train yourself, like one of my writers who's now passed away, Paul, and I'd read my piece, and he's like, how many pages is that? And I'm like, I don't know, about 10, but it's really big writing and whatever. I don't know how you write that fast and can tell a complete story like that, but you get used to it. And you tap into, when you're going that fast or just letting it rip, you start tapping into memories that you don't recall, and that will happen to me in the editing process while I'm working on my memoir. It's like, oh my God, I forgot about that.
So you think the physical maneuver of holding a pen and writing on paper can bring back memories, thoughts that fingers on a keyboard don't?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's actual times where, long time ago, after my birth mother died, she never spoke to me, and that was my hope. And so I would ask her questions, and there's studies about these things, where my handwriting would change, and I should go back and look at what got written on those days, but you could tell that something else within me was answering me. It's a subconscious that you can tap into by really letting that go.
I'm actually delighted to know that you've got kids that know what a paper and pen are.
Isn't that amazing?
And that actually can
They
write.
love their notebooks.
They do?
Give them a sticker
Okay.
and they love it even more.
Okay, great. Do you want to share another piece?
Let me think. Having a hard time seeing today.
And then while you're doing that, you shared with me that the art on the cover of this is also part of a art project, and I want to maybe talk a little bit about the arts in general. We've been talking about the written art, but there's visual art, there's music, but I asked you to read something, so let me turn it over to you.
This is from Sonia Crow, and this was a response. I said I give a line from the poem, or I add one. I don't like honest poem, or what if I were to tell you? I pick these random things. If you don't like any of that, what if I were to tell you? So she responded instead of the poem to what if I were to tell you? What if I were to tell you that a diagnosis cured my life as I knew it? What if I were to tell you that a disease truly blessed me with enlightenment? What if I were to tell you that I found deep-seated healing within a critical illness? What if I were to tell you that I found a new meaning to life when confronted with mortality? What if I were to tell you that a paralyzing fear realized gave flight to my soul? What if I were to tell you that one word that buckles the strongest of knees raised me up? What if I were to tell you, as a naturally mistrusting person, I placed my deepest trust in strangers? What if I told you I walked into the unknown and never once felt lost? What if I were to tell you that this journey with a veiled destination took me right to where I needed to be? What if I were to tell you that I found freedom frozen amidst the fear? What if I were to tell you that I found a purity of myself within a room of chemicals? What if I were to tell you that we are so much more than we will ever truly know?
Wow.
I'm pretty sure
powerful.
that just came out that way for her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So last bit, the arts,
Yes.
the creative arts. Do you think that there's something healing in just the act of creating something, whether it's a poem or a clay cookie jar or a mural?
Yeah, I mean, Terry did this, in the arts program through John Stoddard, and you have a very vibrant one, but I think it's kind of like this book. It's something that she was able to take home, that she flips through. I'm not sure of the meaning, of the pieces for her that she did. There were several that she sent me for the cover, but, and I think the act of probably like writing. This one, creating probably clears your head more than writing, right? You know, that you get into sort of a zone.
Yeah,
and
the
it lets
flow.
go, flow. It lets negative thoughts, and I don't know. You're like, I have these stories that I make up. I could be a millionaire for all the stories I've made up in my life, right? But I think that doing artwork does that for people.
Yeah. And so why don't we do another plug? So Anna and I are teaming up to, there's going to be a survivorship conference that Above and Beyond Cancer is sponsoring on June 11th. And we're going to have 4 topics that are going to be discussed throughout the day. So one of the topics is going to be healthy food and food as medicine. So it'll be all about food and nutrition. Another general topic, and Dr. Nish and Barbara Wisniewski are going to do the nutrition one. Then there's going to be physical activity, all sorts of physical activity, from weightlifting to dancing to forest bathing, and the healing power of that. And Mary Van Hukelum and Dr. Jess Gorsulich from the University of Iowa are going to do that one. And then there's going to be one on things that go bump in the night, the psychosocial distress of the uncertain future, and Julie Larson is going to do that. And then Anna and I are teaming up to do the healing power of the arts, where we will bring out some of discussion and examples of visual art and poetry and music and writing, and there'll be a bit of teaching, a bit of prompting, and also some entertainment that will come from that. So that's those are the 4 topics that are going to be covered, and it's June 11th, and you can sign up at the aboveandbeyondcancer.org website. So I'm looking forward to doing that with you.
Me too. That'll be awesome.
So let's open it up to questions. So if you are watching us live streaming right now, you can put your question in the comment section or the little, what's it called? The
chat box.
The chat box. There we go.
See,
The
I
chat
don't
or
have
the
stuff
comments.
on my phone, but I know a chat box.
And but the live studio audience gets first shot. So Angelina, first question for Anna.
I always loved creative writing in high school and all. I couldn't remember the things I wrote, but I come from a musical family, so sometimes those essays or poems turned into lyrical form. But now I'm a 4-year cancer survivor. I can't remember all. I mean, it's good that my brain blocked a lot of that. So do you come across any patients that are survivors and you're asking them to remember something, or is it just to for the present and to the future kind of communication through their writing?
The only requirement that I have of anybody is that they just write. So there's no, I've known, I believe in Palo Alto, where a friend of mine had cancer treatment in California, where they specifically spent time on different, aspects of what had happened with them during their cancer process. I leave it more open-ended so that it can, that they can talk about their cancer, they can talk about their lack of memory of things. That comes up a lot in their writing. I can't remember. Or, I've got fuzzy brain and things like that, but that they can talk about a past Christmas or something their grandmother baked, so I leave it more open-ended so that it can be whatever. But it does come up a lot that they're having problems memory with fog.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Other questions? Raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll bring the microphone around to you.
And we've got a question from a viewer tonight. Marion is watching on Facebook. Marion says, writing is such a great tool for those who don't feel they may not have a verbal voice on their cancer journey. If that makes sense, I think journaling and writing are so moments and segments of time. Thank you for what you do with these classes. I would consider you a gift to those with cancer, a voice through the art of writing.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's from Marion. So, and I had a question about, sometimes with, oddly to think of it in this, but comedy, improvisational comedy. Some people believe improvisational comedy is always the best, that improvisational songwriting is best, that improvisational poetry can be the best in some situations. Is it just once in a while, or is it a lot of the time?
Wow, that begs to say that everything you write first draft is perfect. You know, that was like me saying in 6 months I was writing a memoir about searching for my birth mother, and I was going to sell it and be $1 million richer. You know, it didn't happen. You know, I think I've written one poem. It's not here. And it was a rant poem about my hairdressers in Ames, Iowa, when I first moved back to Ames. And you know, it's not good for prime time, but that I didn't change. You know, that's probably the only thing in my life I haven't changed.
But for example, in your class, that would be called improv. You give them the prompt.
That's improv of
They didn't
writing,
know
right?
what the prompt was before they got there. You gave them
Right.
the prompt. But have you ever given a prompt and say, do something
No.
in the next 2 weeks and bring it to us? Okay. Yeah, you haven't. There would be like, okay, they get 2 weeks to think it through.
Right. I think, you know, I do have a repeat prompt, which I lifted off of another woman who actually knows Karen. Her name's escaping me now, but the Who Am I Today? And she begins every one of her sessions with that, you know, which one could say, oh, I know what it's going to be, but you know what? You are different on every day of the week, every minute of the day, right? And your answer will always be different.
We have a question over here. Kevin?
If you have any
Wait for,
contact,
I'll have you wait for the microphone. Thanks, Kevin.
give me contact, have you ever worked with any groups that, outside the cancer? I mean, there's other diseases that have whole groups of people that must have something in common with the disease. Are you aware of any other groups in this area? That,
Oh, you mean for writing
yeah.
that do that?
I mean, any MS or, say, Parkinson's or?
I would love to be able to do all of them, but like Dr. Nish said, I'd burn myself out. But, you know, the woman in South Carolina found us by Googling us, but we were the closest, and she's in South Carolina, right? So, you know, I don't know of any. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Although one would say that your Ames Writing Collective for adults, you're sort of dealing with mortality as the.
Yes.
I'm sure that whether you have a diagnosis or not, mortality probably finds its way into some of the writing or the groups that you're working with in Ames.
Yeah, not with the kids so much,
with the
thank
kids, no.
God.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the older adults when they write. But a lot of people that come to our generative writing then, without the purpose of the diagnosis, tend to write their fiction and things like that.
Oh,
you know, so
okay.
I don't run into a lot of memoir writers up
They're
there.
trying to write the great American novel and
They are.
come to you for a
A
little
lot
help.
of sci-fi.
Oh, okay. Okay. Other questions from the studio audience? Well, thank you so much, Anna. This has been great. I just, again, look forward to what we're going to be doing over the next few months as we get ready for our June 11th Survivorship Conference.
Yes.
Beyond the summit, and so invite all of you to come. If you know someone that would benefit by watching this program again, good news, it's been recorded and it will be available on demand beginning tomorrow at the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel and also the Mercy Cancer Center website. So join us again next week. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you, Dr. Deming, for having me.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.